here. I have the pleasure of introducing a friend of mine and somebody whose business I support, a gentleman named Brian Poncelet. Brian has been an advisor helping support families and keeping them safe for over 20 years now. He's going to share a few things and some tips with you regarding retirement planning. And I just heard some scary stuff on the radio this morning. 67% of millennials have not even started. Zero. But they like their $5 coffee. Anyway, so I'm going to put you over to Brian right now, and I think you're going to learn a few interesting things. So Brian, over to you.
All right. Well, first off, let me ask you a question. Do you know what this is? Anybody? Just shout it out. What do you think this is? No? This is your retirement. This is your nest egg. This is what you've saved up. This is your RSPs, your house, your taxes. This is everything. Okay? This is the whole ball of wax. This is what we've done the last 30 years. Saving for another 30, maybe even 40 years to retire. So there's a problem though. Problem is, CRA wants its piece. Okay? The other problem is something called inflation. Everybody heard of inflation? Things cost more all the time. Just look at the gas pumps. Inflation wants its piece. Is anybody taking care of or known anybody who's gone into a retirement home or need nursing care? Anybody? Nobody? Nobody has said that? Any parents? Anybody who's gone in? If you've ever had that experience, what you're going to find is that the cost for nursing care or home care stuff is extremely expensive. In fact, there's a retirement home in Oakville where they start at $4,000 a month, per month, and they'll take care of you right up to the time you pass away, but it goes up to almost $20,000 per month if you want the best of the best. So that's going up 3 times the pace of inflation. That's if you want good care. Then, how many people have kids? Okay? Kids come home and they want their share, they want it now. Okay? So this piece represents your retirement. This is going to have to last you 35 years. So folks, we're facing the crisis, and you're here tonight to learn how to put these pieces back together again. So my name is Brian Poncelet, and I'm going to take you on a journey for the next 60 minutes that I think you're going to find very interesting. You're going to get some confidence. You're going to learn a little bit about retirement planning. Before we get started, how many people are retired right now? Anybody? Okay. How many people say 10 years from retirement? 10 years from retirement? 5 years? How many people are not too sure where they stand? Okay, that's sort of like everybody, anyway. Regardless wherever you are in your journey, that's one of the things I help people. Because a lot of people that are saying, you know, should I retire in 5 years? I'm not too sure. Do I need to work part-time? That's something where I'll ultimately sit down with you one-on-one. I don't know, can you guys read this? I'll read it out. It says, this is a financial advisor. He's talking to his client. And the financial advisor says, you need more time to prepare for your retirement. Sign this to legally change your age to 25. Does that sound good? You can legally change your age to 25. Now you might not feel that way, but anyway, so sometimes life gets in the way, things change. For example, you may have somebody might have experienced a job loss, somebody might have got sick, somebody might have got disabled. So sometimes people have made bad financial decisions, and we can't go back in time. But what we try and do is we try and make up for lost time as best we can without taking a lot of risk. So the agenda tonight, and I apologize if you can you guys, how good are your eyes?
Well, we have screens on the sides.
Yeah, we
too.
got screens on the sides here. both sides. So the agenda is what we're gonna talk about. We're gonna talk about government benefits, Canada Pension Plan, old age security. We're gonna talk about that famous thing called clawback, CPP and OAS, death of partner. Your nest egg, once you've retired, there's something called accumulation versus distribution, something called sequence of returns, and there's a rule out there, a very famous rule. It's famous for financial advisors, nobody else knows what it is. It's something called the 4% rule, withdrawal rule. Anybody know anything about that? Okay, if you do a Google, you can find out what it is. Larry's later gonna talk about a home audit and find out how many people have had a bad experience with insurance,
What kind of insurance?
like home insurance. It's all been perfect, never had any issues?
That's good.
Okay, then that's great, then Larry's gonna have no problem. What's that?
I said there are many issues. When there's some problem, you go to
Absolutely.
the insurer, they don't listen, they say you have to pay
Yeah.
half of the money and then we will contribute. So
Yep.
this is
Yeah,
a big.
generally, you're
Yeah.
100% right. I was hoping to get a few more people animated here. Generally, when it comes to insurance, people pay, then you make a claim, and either the claim is delayed or denied, or you don't get nearly as much what you were expecting. At the very end, there's a feedback survey, and if you complete that, you have a chance to win a gift card, and there's also, Larry's giving away a book. Okay, retirement is really it's like a three-legged stool. You've got your federal programs, which is the Canada Pension Plan, old age security. You've got personal savings, like your tax-free savings accounts, RSPs, RIFs, and workplace pensions. How many people got a pension, a true pension at work? Okay, very, very few people have that anymore. I think corporations, there's only about 11% of corporations in Canada actually have a pension. Most of the banks, they all got rid of the pensions. If you're lucky to be with the government, they're one of the last places that have a true pension. Those things are worth gold. Okay, Canada Pension Plan, a lot of people don't realize this, but this actually started back in 1965. So they figured, even back then, they figured, people better save for their retirement. So the government said, well, all adults over 18 with earned income contribute up to age 65. So back in 1965, the contribution rate was 3.6%. So you paid half, the employer paid half, so 3.6. But of course, we've heard of inflation, and guess what? Now it's almost 10%. And by 2025, it's going to be about 12%. So they're always changing rules with Canada Pension Plan. Is that easier to see?
Yes.
Okay, that's great. So the retirement, or the benefit at retirement, is 25% of your average earnings over the duration of your working life, subject to maximums. So right now, the CPP maximum is about $56,000. So if you're making, say, $75,000 or $100,000, you're going to be eligible for the $56,000, but there's subject to rules and maximums. Okay, Canada Pension Plan. When should you draw on CPP? Well, that's a question I get all the time. And I can tell you right now, what applied 5-10 years ago doesn't apply anymore, because the government likes changing rules. Usually when they change the rules, it's not in your best interest. But if you took two people, one person at 60, one person at 65, and let's say they both dropped dead at age 74, financially they'd be exactly the same. So whether you collect at 60 or 65, you're both dead at 74, you're financially the same. So one of the things I ask people is, what's the likelihood of you living past 74? So if you collect at 60, you live past 74, you just lost a lot of money. So by waiting 5 years from, let's say we take the average of $631 a month, and we go up to wait 5 years, we're heading towards $1,000 a month. If you wait till 70, that goes up actually by another 42%. So now we're $1,700. So when we sit down, one of the things is, we'll discuss is when's the best time to draw your CPP, and it's based on, obviously, on your income need, your taxes, asset, health. I mean, if you're not gonna live a long time, you might as well get the money now. Now, just for your information, I've thrown a lot of stuff at you, but I've got a lot of handouts. So if you look at those folders, you'll see some handouts. So for example, on the CPP, you know, when's the best time to collect? There's some articles I pulled out from different sources. Old age security, you can collect at 65, you don't have to work for that, you get it automatically. It's about $7,000 per year. Age 70, if you decide, hey, I don't need it, I'm gonna wait till age 70, you get $9,500 or 36% more. Old age security is fully taxable. So let me ask you a question, is 50% of your money, is that good enough for the government? Or should we pay more? Should we pay more than 50%?
No.
Okay, the government actually says if you're making over $123,000, they don't want 50%, they want it all back, 100% back, okay? Because you don't need it, right? That's their philosophy. It's not gonna get any better. You can laugh now, or I can throw jokes here. So the clawback starts at about $76,000. So at $76,000, not only you're paying your taxes, but they want this extra 15%, they call it clawback. So it's sort of like, has anybody heard of the health premium? Is that a tax or is that a premium? What's the difference between a premium and a tax? It's the same thing, they're taking the money out of your pocket, right? So, again, the best solution, we want to try and lower your taxes dramatically in order to keep the old age secure, because that drives people up the wall like crazy. They're like, hey, wait a second, I'm supposed to get this money, now the government wants it all back. I'm not too happy about that. So one of the things I try and do, try and push people in a lower tax bracket so we can keep that money as best we can. And everybody's situation obviously is different. This is something that's very rarely talked about, and I think in one of the handouts there, I believe, one of the handouts, it talks about the CPP survivor benefit. So one of the CPP survivor benefit is retirees 98-cent a month shock. So what happened is if you get the maximum of, let's say, around $1,100 a month, and let's say your spouse passes away, well, only one person can have the maximum, so you could technically be out of pocket, so you get nothing from the spouse. The average survivor pension is about $430 a month, or about $5,000 a year. So $5,000 a year is not too much. On the other side, if I ask everybody before you leave, you gotta write me a check for $5,000, you could probably consider that a lot of money, right? So $5,000 is nothing to sneeze at. The death benefit, if a spouse passed away, Canada Pension Plan, is $2,500, fully taxable. So depending on your tax bracket, you're not gonna get that $2,500. Well, they're gonna give it to you, but then they're gonna want a chunk of that back. So depending on your tax bracket, if you're at 30% tax bracket, you're actually left with $1,700 to bury your husband or your wife. Old age security survivor pension is zero. You get nothing. Okay? A lot of people aren't aware of it. Now, who does this apply to mainly? Any idea? Who usually dies first?
Nobody knows.
Well, it's actually generally men. I've been to a lot of retirement homes, and I can tell you that the ratio of females to men is about 9-to-1. Now, for most males, it'd be great if they were 20 and you had that kind of ratio, but unfortunately, it doesn't work. Life doesn't work that way. If you manage to survive, you don't know what day it is, you're surrounded by all these women, but there's not much you can do about it. Too late. But all this is about for women. So a lot of times, I don't want to stereotype, but I'm going to stereotype. Generally, women are younger than their husbands. Women will live longer than their husbands if you have the same age. So if there's a 4-year gap between, say, the woman is 4 years younger than the husband, the woman are typically gonna live at least 7 years, maybe longer than the man. So a lot of times when I talk about this stuff and say, hey, we gotta deal with this, the husband, if I've got husband and wife there, the husband might say, a lot of times he doesn't say it, but if he's by himself, he'll say, it doesn't matter, you know, I'm gone, I don't care. That's why I usually like to have them both there, because usually the husband hasn't got the
Backbone.
backbone or the coolness to say that. Anyway, work delays, pension, here's another big thing that never really gets talked about. The survivor gets 60% of the pension. So if, for example, we've got $60,000, the survivor gets $36,000, 40% drop. How many people can live on 40% less? We give you a pay cut of 40%. Can't really do that. Most people spend 110% of their paycheck. Here's something that's interesting, new relationship. Over time, sometimes people move on, they've got rid of their spouse, they trade them in for a younger spouse or whatever. Weirdly enough, depending on the pension, the ex-spouse or ex-partner, they might not be entitled to a pension. Sometimes we gotta look into it. So each pension, if you're with a different company, there could be different rules. So a lot of people think, I know what's going on. Well, maybe not, and it doesn't hurt to review what's written down there. So, how many people are homeowners? Okay. Is there anybody not a homeowner? Okay. If you have a house and your house burns down, do you want full replacement value, or if we drop a trailer on the lot, is that good enough? You want full replacement value, yeah. So it's the same thing with these pensions. These pensions at $60,000 as an example, that pension is probably worth maybe $1.5 million, $2 million at least. So one of the things I talk about is asset protection or pension protection. And so it's the same as protecting your house. So you want to protect that. I don't know if you can read this, but I'll read it out for you. It's, I guess retirement is okay, but what I miss most is goofing off on company time. It's fabulous, right? Not really working, and somebody's paying me for it. It's awesome. So, accumulation versus distribution. And this is one of the things that drives me up around the bend with the media, is that people will talk about, hey, the market's up, down, don't worry about it, right? On the accumulation phase. So let's see how it works. Let's say we got $100,000. First year we go up 27%, so we're at $127,000, so we're pretty happy. Here we've got another 7%, so we've got $136,000. I don't know if everybody can see this, it's the green line here. And then the third year we're down 13%, so we're sitting at $118,000. This is the accumulation phase. So on the other one, we start at $100,000, we drop 13%, we're at $87,000. We go up 7%, so we're at $93,000. The next year we go up 27%, so guess what? We're actually at the same, so we're all good, right? Well, there's something called the distribution phase, and that's the most dangerous phase you'll ever be in, because if you mess it up, basically financial disaster may happen. Money can run out sooner. This gentleman at York University, he talked about, and you've got it in your handouts, there's sequence of returns. And in the media, everybody will talk about, hey, you're gonna average 7% rate of return. Well, in the markets, it doesn't really work that way. So if we have the first scenario, they've got $100,000, we're taking out $9,000 per year. So the first scenario, we get an even 7% every single year until the money runs out at age 86, 21 years. Then we got a fluctuating rate of return averaging 7%. So with the first year we got 7%, then we minus 13%, then 27%. So So we're averaging 7%. These scenarios keep repeating every 3 years. So in the second scenario, the funds run out at age 83, 18 years. The key thing there is we've lost money on the second year. Third scenario, we've got 7%. We made 27%, so we're pretty happy. Third year, we've lost 13%. Funds run out at age 89, so that's fantastic. The fourth scenario, this is Murphy's Law, is lost 13%, then we're up 7, plus 27, guess what? Money is running out at 81, so 16 years. So you can see getting those negative returns, if they're early in the game, that makes a huge difference. Here's sort of like a real life scenario. So Stephen is retiring, he's got poor returns and he's got some good returns. Michelle, good returns and poor returns, and they're both retiring with $100,000 and they're withdrawing $5,000 a year in retirement. That's in your PowerPoint slides. So each of them enjoy a 30-year average annualized rate of return of 4.6%. So Steve experiences poor returns just after retirement, followed by good returns, and Michelle experienced good returns just after retirement, followed by poor returns. That's what it looks like. I don't know if you can see it. Can you see this clearly? So the first year, Steve, he's down by about 5%. It's not a lot, but he's taking $5,000, but he looks at his statement and says, guess what? He's down to $90,000 right off the first year. So this keeps repeating. Year number 4, because he's had a few negative years, he's at $57,000. He's almost halfway through. And it reminds me of a story, or actually some potential clients that I was dealing with. Does anybody remember the tech wreck in 1999? You know, when the technology of Nortel? Anybody remember that?
Yeah.
Okay, so that was right around 1999. And at that time, markets are going up, everybody's making a ton of money. Did a seminar, and this couple was ready to retire. They're sitting on about $1 million. And the person from the other advisory company said, hey, you know what? You should average 6% rate of return as long as you're retired, no big deal, right? Now 6% is not outrageous, especially when you've got the tech markets going through the roof. Well, unfortunately, 9/11 happened. Actually, I don't know if you realize, but there was actually about 3 years that there's negative returns. So by about 2004, on $1 million, they're taking out $60,000, like their advisor said, take out 60, we'll factor it for inflation. Take a wild guess by year number 5 where they're sitting on this $1 million account. Anybody? They're sitting on just under $500,000. Year number 5, they're still got, I don't know, 20 years to go. So when they came in to visit me, and unfortunately they were with the other advisor, they're like, hey, what can we do? And I was like, well, at that point you've lost half your money. You got 20 years to go. There's not much I can do. We can't make up for lost time. So weirdly enough, we can have some really devastating returns. Like from 99 to 2009, don't know if you're aware, but the Standard & Poor's, I don't know if you're aware of or heard of the Standard & Poor's 500 US companies. Anyway, from 99 to 2009, the rates of return, believe it or not, was after inflation was -2% for the entire decade. -2, because you had 2008. Anybody remember that? Market was down.
Yes.
So it can be devastating. You could actually have a period of time, a decade of poor returns. So anyway, getting back to this, Michelle, luckily Michelle, she's got positive returns. She's sitting at 125,000. So unfortunately with Steve, he ran out of money in 17 years just because he had some negative returns. And that's the difference. If you don't get it right, or you don't set up your portfolio right, then, and if you're ready to retire and something like another 2008 happened, or let's say the President of the United States got shot or something bizarre, who knows, weird stuff, somebody tweeted him to death, he could be gone. So, 4% rule. This was set up by a gentleman by the name of Bill Bagan. He's a graduate of MIT Aeronautical Engineering Program. He actually was a certified financial planner, and he figured, hey, you know, what is a good number for people to withdraw? There's got to be something out there. So he devised his 4% rule. So the 4% rule basically said, let's say we've got $1 million portfolio. You should be able to take $40,000 out of that portfolio every year. But we're going to adjust it for inflation, fees, and taxes. So weirdly enough, you might be actually withdrawing as much as 7% gross, making it kind of difficult for the money to last 25 years. Now, we've actually, I don't know if anybody's aware, but this bull market, since 2008 after the market crash, this is actually one of the longest bull markets in history. I was talking to somebody about real estate. Is anybody, I assume everybody's over 50. Is anybody under 50? Okay. There's actually never been a time in real estate that has ever done what we're experiencing now in our country's history. Not even close. We've had pops where things go up, but generally it comes down. So all I can suggest is at some point this market's got to come down, and it may come down with a thud, and it may last a long time. Okay? So as I kind of alluded to, the 4% rule. The 4% rule has been in question. There's a gentleman from Morningstar, Dave Blanchett, kind of suggested that the returns have been high. They may not continue doing what they're doing. And another gentleman from Princeton University said the same thing about the 4%. And 4% doesn't sound like a lot, right? Especially if you saved $1 million, right? How difficult is it to save $1 million? And so if you imagine if you're saving $1 million and somebody says, okay, you know, the first year, just don't take any more than $40,000 out of that, you know, and let's try and ease up on that. That's difficult. This is one of the more important slides. You need two types of wealth. You need a statement wealth. That's where the investments hopefully go up. You look at it and, hey, we've made some money, great. But we know that sometimes you look at the statements, or you don't look at the statements. You're like some people, you say, I know the market's bad because I've been listening to the radio or the TV or whatever. Trump's doing something. I'm not even open that statement. I'll open up when maybe I have a glass of wine or something. And then there's something called contractual wealth, which is pensions, annuities, guarantees. You really need two types of wealth. Something that's guaranteed, and something that ideally could hopefully beat inflation. You have to have a balance of both. Annuity. What is annuity? How many people have heard of annuity? A few people? Okay. You know why you haven't heard? Most people haven't heard of annuity. Any idea? Because banks don't sell them. They can't sell them. Okay? Brokers don't like them. Okay? Why would a broker not like an annuity? Any idea?
Commission?
Commission, exactly right. Annuity is basically when you give a lump sum of money to the life insurance company, and the insurance company agrees to pay you a guaranteed amount set for the number of years or for life. So you can have different types of annuities. You can put an annuity in a RIF, you can put it in non-registered monies using cash assets. Now, the thing that people don't like about annuities is that once you give the money to the insurance company, you can't just phone them up and say, hey, I'd like my money back. It's a one-way ticket. On the other side, if you live a long time, the insurance company is going to be out of pocket. If you die, then the insurance company is going to be making some money. Okay? So I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that you should put all your money in annuities, but it's something you should be aware of. So here's something, this is current rates right now, so if you got a male 65, an annuity is going to produce about 6.2% guaranteed for the rest of your life. Guaranteed. Can you find a GSE paying 6.2%? No. And if it's non-registered, 80% of that money is tax-free. So if you're a male age 70, it's about 7.2%, and almost all of that, 90% of that is tax-free. So if you're at a 50% tax bracket, you gotta find a 12% GIC to compete. When do you think we're gonna find interest rates at 12%?
When hell freezes.
Yeah, I mean, we never know, I mean, it could happen, but if interest rates went up to 12%, I'm saying that these condos, all that stuff, you probably pick them up for about $50,000, maybe $20,000 a pop. I mean, they'll be worth nothing at 12%. So why would somebody consider looking at an annuity is longevity risk. I tell people the worst thing that can happen is you live a long time, but your money doesn't. Okay, it's one thing to be young and broke. It's one thing to be old and broke. And actually in the US and in Canada, the biggest groups to file for bankruptcies are, we'll call them seniors, 65 plus. And it's about 3 times what it was 20 years ago, 3 times. So if we take a look at a couple, the odds of a couple, husband or wife, at least one member of the couple living to age 80 from 65 is 94%, it's almost 100%. So even to age 90, it's 63%. So there's some pretty good odds that somebody's gonna live to 90 plus. Self-employed, I put this slide up because some people say, hey, you're talking about people who are working for companies, I'm self-employed. How many people are self-employed? Okay, how many people are incorporated? Okay, if you're incorporated, you want to talk to me because I'm going to tell you some ways to take money out of your corporation tax-free. One of the things is work with your accountant. People like Price Waterhouse, Grant Thornton, they talk to people like myself because there's only a few ways you can take it out tax-free, and one of them is the word that nobody likes is insurance. But it's essentially like a glorified, unlimited, tax-free savings account. So if somebody said, hey, if I can put $1 million in that tax-free savings account and pay no taxes, would you do it? If you had the money, you probably would. Why not? Nobody likes paying taxes. Even if you had a poor rate of return, if you pay no tax, that's huge. So if you're self-employed, you're incorporated, you want to definitely talk to me. I can show you some things that you probably don't know. Now, protecting your assets, this is where I brought in the expert Larry to talk about. Why do I talk about vehicle insurance, property insurance, liability insurance? Why is that important? Any ideas?
Just in case.
Well, let's say, and this, I had a client who actually, unfortunately, she passed away. Her daughter phoned me up, said, Brian, my mom was killed. This is actually mid-July, and she was killed in a car accident. I said, wow, you know, it was actually in the Burlington News. What had happened is a 73-year-old had a heart attack, and she was putting up, I guess, some signs in front of the store that she was working. She's actually about 15 feet from the curb. So the car mounted the curb, seriously injured this 19-year-old and killed her. So what do you think is going to happen to the 73-year-old as far as liability? Is he going to pay? Okay, and if you depending on the scenario, if you've got $2 million liability, and Larry will talk about this, quite frankly, you may not be covered enough. Because basically after they take your, take the check from the insurance company, they say, what else you got? You got a cottage? Good, we'll take that. They can actually garnish 20% of your gross paycheck until you pay that money. So the reason why I talk about it, if you're retired and you don't have enough money, the last thing you want to do is let's say have your house flooded and you're not covered. It's a $50,000 damage and you got a check from the insurance company for 15. Where's that money coming from? It's coming from your retirement fund. So even though I don't sell this, I talk about it because we want to make sure that in retirement you don't have what I call Murphy's Law happen. Then I talk about things like disability insurance, medical insurance, government plans, making sure wills, power of attorneys, taking care of, how many people have, wills? How many people have a will that's less than 2 years? Okay. If it's, less than 2 years, you're probably good. If it's, beyond 2 years, it doesn't hurt to take another look at it, okay? And also things like life insurance. So I'm gonna pass this over to Larry. Larry, I should tell a little bit, connected with Larry through a mutual friend. Larry's been sort of like this, we're sort of like twins here, we're about the same age, and Larry's been doing property casualty for the last, is it 25, 30 years?
Oh, hell no.
No.
Several years.
Several years. And Larry's actually one of the only people in Ontario that will actually look at your home insurance policy and do an audit. So let's say, for example, anybody with State Farm? No? Or cooperators, a broker, or anything like that. Basically what it'll do is it'll look at the policy, tell you what you may want to consider asking the person at cooperators or whomever, and it'll give an honest evaluation, and he'll say, go check this out. In my case, I'm with RBC. RBC, my wife has got a great group plan, and we've got a great deal. Sent this the paperwork over to Larry, and Larry said, okay, check this, and this out. And in a nutshell, I picked up another $800,000 worth of coverage I never had, and I was out of pocket $20. Now, why didn't guys at RBC tell me? Well, they won't tell you until they're not there to educate you. So Larry's helped me a lot. So one of the things that at the end, anybody who books an appointment will have the opportunity to have somebody who's totally independent. He's not there to switch insurance companies, but will give you a totally independent audit that's worth about $130. So, Larry?
Thanks very much, Brian. Again, thanks everyone for having me here, and I will make one correction. I've never heard of anybody tell me they've ever heard of anybody in the, never mind the province, but the country who actually audits people's home insurance policies and doesn't sell it. I used to sell insurance. My specialty was property, so you own a house, you own rentals, or you have a cottage. My specialty was protecting homeowners in those three things. I was 100% commissioned by choice. I worked with a brokerage. I like the brokerage because brokers give you a choice of insurance companies instead of Allstate, State Farm, cooperators, or the banks, or CAA. They only sell their own stuff. And as Brian was alluding to, some of those places are call centers. Call centers, it's a science how they sell. They're very light on the education. So I got into this industry after 25 years of corporate sales. So I specialized in property. I left the industry for a number of reasons. Number one day my boss came up to me and said, Larry, you talk too much to customers. Just say three things. It's a good price, it's a good insurance company, when can you come in and sign? And I looked at him and thought, you're a big reason why I got into this business, to not be like you. So I was asking more questions than anybody in my office. As a matter of fact, I live in Barrie. I'm born and bred in Toronto, Oakville, but I was asking more questions than people told me anybody who sold insurance in that city did. The more questions somebody asks you, generally the more protected you're going to be. Think about it. Your accountant, your doctor, your lawyer. The more they probe, the more questions they ask, the more they'll learn about you, and generally the better the solution that you're going to get. So I built a business in 2015 called HomeGuard. Today, I spend most of my time supporting financial advisors across Ontario, actually across Canada, because I coach them in how to bring interesting, creative ways to help their customers that they're not doing. Quite frankly, none of my financial folks ever did this in the 30 plus years I've worked with wealth management folks in different banks and independents and so on. So I'm having a lot of fun doing this, so thank you, Brian, for having me do this. I want to shake up and wake up the world, because one of the questions I ask, and I'm going to ask you right now, is what do you think is the largest physical, tangible asset you may ever own in your life? I'm not talking about the portfolio stuff, that's a Brian thing, but the largest physical, tangible asset you might ever own.
Or your house.
Your house, exactly. What do you think the second biggest physical, tangible asset or group of assets you might ever own outside of other property, other homes, other houses, other rentals? What do you think is the second biggest thing?
My car.
That's the only answer I get. I've asked over 1,500 people this same question because I train folks across Canada, and one person got this right.
Uh-oh, no, that wasn't me.
No, I'm sorry. But you're in good company though. The contents in your house. If you look at your home insurance policy, the two biggest numbers you'll see by far are rebuilding the house and the contents in that house. They're in the hundreds of thousands or more. Nobody gets that because when you think about it, if somebody's trying to sell you home and auto, how are they selling it to you? What is their message? Save, save, discount, pay less. That's what they're telling you. But guess what? Have you ever heard of the term, you get what you pay for? My second question, or third question to you is, when is the last time, because we saw a lot of hands go up in terms of who owns a house. If you own rental properties and you own a cottage, different animals, lots of stuff going on. But the second question is, when is the last time anybody here in the room got a phone call from your insurance person to ask you update questions about your properties without you phoning them first? They initiated the phone call. When's the last time it ever happened? You're in great company too, because I keep stats on this. As I said, over the last few years, I've asked this to over 1,500 people. 98% of the people in the rooms have said the same thing: crickets, silence. So that means that you have to assume and trust and believe that you are fully protected and you'll get $1 back for every dollar that's gone. And you know what happens when you assume. But if you don't have an accident and you don't make a claim, it doesn't matter. Fine. But guess what? There's things that are going on today, right now, as I speak, that are hurting people. And they don't have a clue until they call their claims adjuster and they become a passenger of what the process is. And they've probably never gone through this before. So I love to help financial advisors to protect their customers in a way that they've never seen or heard of before. Another thing that the Bryans of the world do is he asks their clients, do you have a mom or dad or anybody in the family who's a senior who's struggling? Yes or no? Do you know anybody in your family or anybody in your friends who might be struggling? Brian will give his clients who answer yes to that question this long-term care guide. This is a 95-page guide for the whole process if that journey might be in front of you for a senior person. If you've ever gone through this before, has anybody gone through the long-term care process with somebody in their family? If you haven't, it ain't pretty. It's pretty scary. It's very, very scary. So, to help people to protect for that journey, Brian introduces this to those folks as well too, because he wants to help families and so on. So that's what I do. I help support financial advisors. So I'm gonna go through some real life examples. I'm gonna go through 6 or 7 of them. One of the things that I do is I audit people's home insurance policies on behalf of the advisors. And I call it an audit. I've never heard of anybody doing this before, so I don't sell it, I audit it. And I will send you back, and you will have questions. I always find things that everybody has to go back and check, change, ask for clarification, explain this in English, please, not in insurance talk, but in English. And always people have to go back and get some of these things done. High net worth clients, very, very wealthy people, people who, everybody in the room. I guarantee I'll find stuff. I found stuff on Brian's and Vicky's policy as well too. And they went back and they got some things changed and fixed or defined. The more vague your policy is, the more it favors the insurance companies. Makes sense? Yes, because you don't know what you don't know until something bad happens, and that's when you don't learn. That's when you should not learn about what you're covered for. So I'm gonna talk about some specific examples here. So here's a question, question 4. When you got your home insurance policy, and you're probably the same person who sold you car insurance, did they tell you what their commission was?
No.
Show of hands, look at all the hands. They didn't. When I sold this stuff, I told all of my customers what the commission was, because I'm a consumer. I want to know what I'm paying for. Why not? And I tell you what, it's a referral industry. Financial advisors, it's a referral industry. So if you're transparent and open to customers and people like you and me, and tell people what your cut is, they're gonna say, I never knew that. I've been insured for decades and my insurance person never told me. This is a good thing. So it's about trust and building relationships. So there's another one for you. So when you equate 20% per year, so if you pay $1,000 a year on your home insurance, you can pay a lot more than that. 20% each year is going into that brokerage's pocket or the bank's pocket. not the individual person's pocket, but the whole organization. So do the math. So when I do an audit, and an audit, it comes in, basically, it looks like a binder. The clients of my financial advisors are across Ontario, and in some cases across Canada. I do these things remotely. So it's very simple. All they do is they will send to me, scan and email it off to me, the first several pages of your last renewal, okay? Could be a week ago, could be 11 months ago. I don't care how old it is, just try to make the most recent. And I will audit it, and I will put it in a template form, and I will send the package off to you. We arrange a time on the phone, and we go over it, and it's explained in English, okay? Not insurance talk, in English, so you'll get it, you'll understand this stuff. A lot of people are angry by the time I finish, because I find things and they're in red. The sample audit book that I bring to presentations like this has 40 red lines in it. A red line is not good. Red line could be small, it could be moderate, it could be significant, it could be potential claim denied. Of those 40 red lines, I've got 11 examples I found where you can get 0 if you made a claim. 0, 11 out of 40. And people have no clue how vulnerable they are until something bad happens. And it's not fair. So I love to build relationships with advisors. I also do a lot of work with realtors as well to help protect you folks in the room, because a lot of people have no idea. And you're going to hear some things right now that you may never heard before. Might even curdle your whatever, your eyebrows, your hair will drop out, too late here. So at any rate, here we go. These are real life. So think about this. You mentioned, well, the most common insurance claim in the country for houses. What do you think it is? There's no wrong answer here. The most common? Water. That's right, water. Now there's 4 different kinds of water damage. The most common water damage is sewer backup. That's the number 1. That's the biggest reason why your policies are going up today. Because your insurance person will not call you and say, oh, it just went up $102. Here's why. They're not going to do that. Surprise me, let me know if that happens. Sewer backup. So one example, I spoke to a homeowner. This was several years ago. She owns a multi-million-dollar custom-built bungalow. And the spring runoff in, April, whatever, the wettest time of the year, one of the wettest times, her sewer backed up. Now, the good news is that she was on a septic bed, a septic system, so she had this big plastic thing under the ground. She wasn't sharing all the dirty stuff with everybody down the street, so it could have been worse. But it backed up. It was a 3-year-old custom-built home. Beautiful basement. It was a mess. So she made a claim. She discovered that, there was $75,000 damage to the basement. It wasn't that big a house. It could have been worse if she had more square footage down there. And then she learned that she was covered for $15,000. So she paid her $1,000 deductible, got a check back for $15,000, and she was out of pocket $60,000. This is very, very common. So that's one of the areas that's commonly in red when I audit your policies. That's the area that I commonly see is wrong. So we talk about what you should have. I won't mention who the insurance company is, but it's the Green Bank. So if any of you are with the Green Bank, unfortunately, the largest majority of my bad stories are with that organization. So the most important thing I ask you, if there's nothing else you get out of this tonight, at least from my portion, check your policy to see sewer backup, how much you have. You should have 6 figures. That's $100K or more, okay? Now, I've got statistics from the largest home insurance company in the country where I could tell you where the lowest to the highest risk neighborhoods are right down to the street. I've got those statistics. Your insurance person doesn't even care about those statistics. I got them, so I'll tell you where your homes lie right now. Doesn't guarantee you're going to have a sewer backup event or never have a sewer backup event, but that is an important statistic that all insurance company uses to discuss and to set your rates for home insurance under the sewer backup part. That's a scary one. Number 2, I learned about this. It was a young family in the community. And tell me, how would you feel if you came home one day and your house was on fire and it burned to the ground, and after a few days the insurance people say, claim denied, we're paying you $0.
What's that?
Claim denied, we are paying you $0. We're not going to pay to rebuild your house a few $100,000. A fire. This happened. So for every one story I know of, there's probably a few hundred that I don't know of, just by default. This particular family, here's what happened. There's a gentleman in the family, the husband. He changed careers. He got out of the corporate world. He decided to start his own company. He's self-employed. He's now a consultant of whatever. There's lots and lots of people doing this today. They're getting tired of what it is that they were doing in their career, or they want to move outside of the GTA and what have you. So they're taking a package, or they're leaving. They're starting their own company. This happened to a family, and he had a home-based business. And the fire marshal proved that the fire was not caused by anything to do with his home-based business. But here's what happened. The claim adjuster came into the house, looked around, asked him the questions, what do you do for a living? And then he told them, and they said, oh, do you store any supplies that have anything to do with your home-based business? No. The person was a white-collar career. He was an accountant or an engineer or something. He didn't have supplies. He just had his basic home office stuff like most of us do. And they said, so your career changed. Back then you were this, you were an engineer, and now you're doing this on your own. You're self-employed, home-based business. Yes. Claim denied. You didn't tell us. That's called misrepresentation. Your career changed. You didn't tell us. We don't have to pay you a cent. That's what happened to that person. So what Brian does is I give Brian lots of these little stories and tips that monthly he could blast out to his customers like you and share this stuff with you and hope that you share it with people that you know. So you don't just think about yourself, think about the people around you. You can share this stuff. So when you think about the information you get mailed to you by your financial advisor, does it sound like this stuff? No, it's probably stuff that has to do with the market. Or in the case of realtors, making the house pretty, or recipes, or how to stage it, or whatever. This is real world stuff. So when you think about the replacement value of your house and your contents, hundreds of thousands, probably over $1 million or more if you add that up. How is that going to affect this? That's the box over here, P2. All around the room, P2 is your property, your home and everything in it. If they decide they don't want to pay you, how is a hit of several $100,000 or more going to affect all these other boxes? That's where I come into play to help protect people, because we're not educated on this stuff. That's a real world story. Speaking of fires, real story number 2. Dad comes home, actually it's a weekend, and it was like Tuesday night. He goes in the backyard, has a cigarette, puts it on a dried flower planter, okay? Then he leaves to take the kids to play soccer. This is a true story. It was 3 blocks from my house. It was a Friday night at 7 p.m. Okay, I'm boring, I don't have a life Friday nights, but anyway. And I heard fire trucks, it sounded bad. And I learned the next day that there was a fire 4 blocks from my house. This gentleman, after he left, the planter caught fire. It torched the side of his house, it torched his roof, it torched the roofs of both houses on either side. One neighbor was back in 4 months later, the other neighbor was back in 6 months later. He and his family, 2 kids, 9 and 10 years old, everybody was safe, that's the most important thing. 16 months later, they got back in their house. Claim denied. We're not paying you a thing. You rebuild it yourself. You cart out all this junk yourself. You replace all the stuff inside yourself. Oh, and what didn't get destroyed by fire or water, you have to figure out how to get the smoke smell out of there as well. You're on your own. Why is that? They found out that he was smoking and he put this thing in there. He did not tell his insurance person there is a smoker living in the house. And here's why. He thought, you know what? My premium is going to go up if I tell him there's a smoker. So I don't smoke in the house. I smoke outside in the backyard or in the garage, depending on the time of year or the weather that day. So I don't smoke in the house. We're not going to tell him. Now, that might have cost him $100 extra a year, because smoking does add to the premium. Statistically, it does. Claim denied, misrepresentation, which is a nice way of saying you lied to us. They didn't have to pay him a cent. That's what the contract says. You have to tell them that. But your insurance broker is not asking you the second question. They should be asking you, is there a smoker living in the house? Yes or no? I never found anybody who asked the second question. Is there a smoker living in the house but does not smoke in the house but smokes? I was the only one I knew who would ask that question. I even asked insurance brokers afterwards in the community. I said, you asked the second question? One guy said to me, he says, Larry, I couldn't give a damn if people want to lie to me. That was his answer. That's what he said to me, and we were competitors. So I had to turn around and leave because I was getting angry, because that's not how you treat people, okay? So if you know of anybody who's a smoker, who this falls in, who this applies to, tell them that story, please, because I don't want that to happen to those folks. So that's the second story that's got to do with fire. We talked about the home base office, sewer backup. Group plan. Brian alluded to group plan. RBC. I audited the policy of a lawyer, and when she got called to the bar 14 years ago, she got a phone call saying, hey, congratulations, you're a lawyer, yay, you now get to be a part of a group plan. because we have group plans for lawyers, for firefighters, for police officers, for teachers, you name it, there's a group plan. If you went to a college or university, you might be part of a group plan, or you can get on one if you want to. So this woman said, sure, fine, you know, I've got a car and I'm gonna buy a house now and so on. I audited her policy. It was one of the worst I've ever seen before. She was actually paying about $1,000 more a year than she should have. Now that's an extreme. I've never seen such a bad example. It was awful. Also, she had some of the poorest coverages in some of the different areas that I've ever seen before. She was angry. So she asked me, who do you work with? Who do you refer? There was one gentleman that I refer to that I won't go into, but there's 5 reasons why this guy gets all of my referrals. If your home policy premium goes up $10 from year over year, he will automatically reshop your premiums without being asked. And he will look for you without you having to ask him. $10. $10 if it goes up $10. So that's one of the 4 reasons why he gets all my referrals. She was really angry, so one of my lessons from that example was don't upset a lawyer, because she was really angry. So think about all the lawyers out there and all the doctors, the firefighters, and the teachers. If they're on group plans, they automatically assume they're getting properly covered and getting a fair price. And what happens when we assume? Not a good thing. Has anybody in the room ever done a renovation in their house before that cost more than $5,000? Okay, there's several hands. And does anybody know anybody who's ever done a renovation that cost over $5,000? Yes. Okay. Did you know that if you do a reno of over $5,000 and you don't tell your insurance person, technically speaking, they don't have to pay you and reimburse you anything for that renovation? Nobody I've shared this with has ever heard that one before. I presented to, well, I did an audit of somebody in Forest Hill. He did 4 renos, one a year for 4 years in a row. The cheapest one was an $85,000 powder room. I want to see that powder room. And he said, Larry, I have never heard this before. So he said, technically, I'd be out over $1 million with my renos because I didn't tell my insurance person that it would basically cost more for them to reimburse me if it's destroyed. I said, yes, they don't have to pay you anything above whatever. They probably will, but they can compromise with you and make your life kind of miserable because you didn't tell them. They said, I didn't know that. And I said, well, did your broker who's making 20% a year commission tell you that? No. So there's a lesson right there. 20%, $5,000 is a common number. I'm not saying every insurance company is the same. It could be $10,000 for some companies. It could be $15,000. Depends on the company. But if you know of anybody who's done this, mention that because that is huge. That's a lot of money out of pocket that could affect all these other boxes right here. Okay. Let's talk about rental repairs. This is really, really nasty. I got a call a few weeks ago from somebody saying, can you help my dad? I said, tell me the story. And he said, my dad is a 60-year-old gentleman from Poland. He's been here for a few years. He does light renovations for people that we know and other people we don't know. And he did some plumbing. The solder joint burst, 2nd floor on a weekend when the homeowners were gone. And it flooded the house. $250,000 he's being sued. Now this gentleman does not have a license as a plumber, and he does not have commercial business insurance. He's doing this thing under the table. The customer thought, hey, I'm getting a good deal here. Nice fellow, must know what he's doing. He's got to sue them for $250,000. It's happening right now. It could ruin that gentleman's life, okay? Which means it could affect these other boxes here. So my lesson to the advisors and the realtors that I work with to share this with you, if you know of anybody who has a do-it-yourselfer come in to do plumbing or electrical, those are the biggies. Be very, very careful because you could possibly get claim denied if it's a bad enough accident and the insurance company wants to be picky. If they're having a bad financial year, they may tighten the screws on these rules to the homeowners, such as yourself. So if you know of anybody who falls under that category, you may not be covered if something bad happens because they were not licensed. And it's the world of do-it-yourself right now. HGTV's help with that, but at any rate, here's another one. Does anybody in the room own a cottage? Or does anybody in the room know somebody who owns a cottage? I have seen policies for cottages that are horrible, absolutely awful. I'll give you an example. If you're within 12 kilometers of a fire station or fire hall, which everybody is in the GTA, you're called fire hall protected. So you're probably within 1,000 feet of a fire hydrant, so everybody's good. As you go rural, it gets a little bit more sparse. So I saw somebody's policy that said fire hall protected cottage. It's on an island. It's impossible to be fire hall protected on an island. They don't care if you're back onto a lake or a river or a pond. They do not care. That's not the same thing. So this person could get claim denied for anything that happened to that cottage. It doesn't have to be, it could be fire, it could be water, it could be somebody broke into it and vandalized it. They could say claim denied because, look, on the paper here it says you're within 12 kilometers. I've seen a cottage that said they have a cottage. And I showed the homeowner, I said, you have a furnace on this cottage? No, it's a 3-season. We don't have a furnace. He says, look, it says furnace right here. Furnace is good. Furnace means that you probably may not suffer from burst pipes and water damage in the winter time. That's a good thing. So you get a premium discount because you've got a furnace. He said, I don't have a furnace. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, you could get claim denied. Your rate went down. I said, you're getting a great rate. This is part of the reason why. So if you know of anybody who's got cottages, the big one is how far away from the fire halls they are. The last thing I want to mention, and this is kind of alluding to the car accident that Brian brought up, I look at 3 items on the car policy. I do not audit car policies. Auto insurance is regulated in Ontario. Property, houses are not regulated, so there's a lot more wiggle room going on the property side than there is on the car side. But on the house side, I spoke to somebody who unfortunately had a horrible story. He had a party in his house and a 22-year-old got drunk and fell down the stairs and broke his neck. That 22-year-old, this was several years ago, actually no, 2 years ago, is in a wheelchair. He's a paraplegic. And a few weeks later, he told his best friend who owned the house, who had the party, he said, I'm sorry, bud, but I've got to sue you because I'm going to be out of pocket for the rest of my life. I can't work. And he was engineering a comp sci fellow at one of the universities. We're going to look at what this person's potential loss as a contributor to society is, plus all the medical and all the rehab, and then there's the intangible part about the emotional stress and all. This person was suing for millions of dollars, millions. Commonly, I see $2 million on your home insurance policy. You should have 2, but I see 1 million in some. The most common insurance company I see that has an old $1 million figure, again I won't say it, but it's the Green Bank. They should be automatically doubling it from 1 to 2 million without even asking you. It can cost $7 a year to double it to cover your butt. But I'm telling you, if you're out of pocket hundreds of thousands of dollars versus paying an extra $7 or $20 a year, do it. I mean, it's a no-brainer. Do it because it only has to happen once. The back of my business card used to say, it won't happen to me. Because that's the psychology in insurance. It won't happen to me. I got insurance. I'm fine. I'm okay. Yeah, but just how much do you know about your policy? Don't learn about it when the accident happens. So the bottom line is I really, really enjoy opening people's eyes. I get a lot of questions. I get people buying these long-term care guides when I speak to the advisors, clients, and so on. And I'm having a lot of fun watching people go, I didn't know that. Or an advisor told me once, Larry, you presented about 10 months ago. I went back and I found out that I could have been out of pocket $90,000 for my renovations I've done. I didn't even know that. Got a new roof, new shingles? You might be missing a discount, and nobody knows that one. You know, I walk around and drive around, I see new shingles, and I said to myself, I should knock on every door. I don't sell insurance anymore. And say, did you know that, call up your insurance person, you'll probably get a little discount on your new shingles. I didn't know that. Yeah, and I bet you will never get a phone call from your insurance person to tell you that as well too. So I come along with Brian's clients because Brian wants to help protect people with these boxes. P2, that's me, P2. I'm French now. Look at that. So it's a pleasure to be able to share this stuff with Brian's clients. I usually take questions at this point. I don't know if you're open to that right now, Brian, or where we're at here.
Yeah, I mean, I could just add a little bit with what Larry is saying is, Larry's saying
Can I ask one question
Yeah,
from
sure.
Larry?
Yes.
Yeah.
Larry, I have a very bad experience even in UK when we were having insurance, and over here we are owner of a condo.
Yes.
And once the water flowed above apartment, and my roof, my ceiling was very bad. We contacted the insurance people, the State Farm. They say, oh my dear, you have to spend first $1,000 and then you please contact us. I say, you are taking the money for the last 7 years and now you are telling me this. So my experience is very, very bad about the insurance companies. They are very soft and they are very cooperative when they want to sell their product. The moment we will sign it, they are gone. They will never be
Silence,
available.
it's silence, isn't it?
They are silent.
But
will-
they got 20% every year,
Yeah.
guaranteed.
And they will never be available on the phone, and even you have to visit. Their attitude is very rude and very uncooperative. So I have a very, very bad images about the insurance companies.
Mhm.
So I have listened to you. So I will have your card because might be I will get best benefit from the
Absolutely, yeah, we can have a chat
Second
afterwards.
question is this: once we will renovate a condo amounting to 5,000, for example, so what benefit we will get from the insurance companies?
What you should do is just say, I just did a reno, and they'll say, how much did you spend? And you'll tell them. They may not care for $5,000. They may say, you're fine, that's okay. They're more concerned about like bigger numbers, but I'm just assuming $5,000. It could be different from that company, I don't know. The best thing to do, get your smartphone out, take pictures of everything. We used to do home inventories, contents of people's stuff. And we don't do them anymore because I tell people, get out your smartphone, take pictures of the most expensive stuff, labels, SKUs, serial numbers, take pictures of those things, and it's stored up in the cloud, so it's not gonna get burned in the fire, and do that yourself, because when you have an accident or you're robbed, they're going to say, give me an Excel spreadsheet of this stuff, write it down, they'll give you one. And the robbery examples are the worst because quite often people don't realize something's stolen until months after they signed off on the last check. It's too late, you've already gotten your last check and so on. So do that part yourself. But the bottom line is call your insurance person and ask them because that's what they're supposed to be doing.
No, fine,
Yes.
thank you.
Good.
And Brian, before you proceed, I have a very small question because they're asking about the state market. Many condos prices are going up, whereas bungalow prices are going down. What is the reason for that? Whereas the immigrants population is increasing.
Well, that's a great question. I don't, real estate is not my game,
It's
so
okay.
yeah, I can't really say. I mean, difficult to say. The only thing I can say is I don't know what I don't know. So on the real estate front, which I was alluding before, is prices going up like crazy. So
Supply and demand.
Yeah, I really don't know. Anyway, thanks very much, Larry. Gonna move
Thank
on
you.
here.
Thank you, Larry.
Okay, why plan your future? Well, one of the things is, people always ask in their mind is, okay, what's gonna happen? Well, I'm gonna ask you 4 questions. What we'll learn that's new is a lot that we can't cover here, sort of like to what you're talking about in insurance and everything else. How long will it take? First meeting I usually take is less than an hour. So what should I bring? If you want it to be productive, I tell people to bring your RSPs, your risk statements, your TFSA, most recent tax return, and insurance policy. I see a lot of horror stories on insurance policy. People who've bought insurance policies, never heard from the insurance agent. They don't really know what they have. Good idea to keep a bit of an inventory there. Will you try and sell me anything? Nope. How will we feel over when it's over? Well, you're gonna feel informed and confident. And where we meet, I'm gonna, I've changed this up a little bit. Some people, it's difficult for them to, for whatever reason, to come to my office. I will make the effort to see you. I've even, I think there might be a time on the weekend that if that has to be the case, we'll do that. More often than not, I'll try and encourage you to come to my office, but I'll certainly make the first few meetings at your house if that's convenient. Next steps, 3 possibilities. First possibility, we want to work together and we discuss specific ideas and strategies. Second one is, hey, we like each other, but you know what? For whatever reason, time's not right. You know, people coming from Europe, etc. And we just said, hey, we're gonna set up a follow-up time in the future. But I always tell people that the first step is to book an appointment. Third possibility is we don't like each other, we call each other names, and then we leave screaming, okay? Hopefully that doesn't happen. 4 great questions. First question is, what specific plans have you made to double your income in retirement? What specific plans, okay? This is stuff I address. What would happen to your financial situation if the stock market dropped 40%? And in 2008, it was actually almost 40% right there. Brutal. If you died this year, how would your family's lifestyle change after paying the taxes to CRA? A lot of people have no idea what would happen. And what plans have you and your children made to deal with rising costs of long-term care? Now, most people, it sounds like nobody's really experienced that. All I can say is if at some point the odds of dealing with a parent or a loved one in a long-term care, I'm saying that the odds of happening is very high unless you got no family. If you're an orphan, maybe nothing's gonna happen, but anybody who's got a family, sooner or later something's gonna happen because people are living longer and longer. Unfortunately, their mental capacities have diminished over the years. Okay, so here's another objection we got. I don't have my calendar, I have to check with my partner. Okay, I hear that all the time. And I say, no problem, take a look at the feedback. You can put down a date that you think might fit. Your best bet. If it doesn't work out, we can always change that later, but that's critical to the first step of your success, because if you don't book something, you kind of almost wasted this time, okay? Sort of like going to the gym. I can get the membership, but if I don't at least go and check the place out, you know, what's the point of getting a real good deal on a membership? I want to think about everything I heard tonight. That's the classic thing I get all the time. And the only thing is I can say is, by tomorrow, you've forgotten most of what you just heard today, okay? When we set up a point, this is gonna reinforce some of the topics we talked about, okay? Can't tell you that it's like that. People say, if I'm going to think about it, like, okay, there's a lot of stuff we haven't discussed one-on-one. You mentioned a little bit about insurance. There was somebody I talked to earlier, happened to be with Investors Group. There's other people with different companies. You know, why plan your future? Why somebody like myself? Just a quick background on myself. I'm totally independent. I don't work for a bank. I work for you. So even though I don't have a big bank behind me, in some ways that's to your best interest. Already have an advisor. Hear that all the time. And one of the things is when everybody's got a doctor. How many people have a doctor? Okay. The doctor wants to check out on something on you, but he's not too sure what to do. He sends you to a specialist. I'm a specialist in protecting your assets for secure retirement. I'm a retirement specialist, okay? Most advisors out there are just general practitioners that do whatever, okay? And if your advisor is showing you how to double your income in retirement, there's got some specific plans to do that, and they're doing everything else, I'd say, great, you're probably in great hands, no worries. But one of the things that I tell people is you're here tonight for a reason, whether you know it or not. Because subconsciously, you're looking to do something more. You're looking to, you want a higher level of care, you want a higher level of intelligence, you want something more. So one of the things I tell people is that if you don't do something like book an appointment, one of the things that's gonna happen is that you're gonna, every time you open the door to the house, you're gonna say, you know what? Thinking about what Brian was saying, I should really do something. So I always tell people, I say, look, let's just deal with it. Unless that person has got some specific ideas on how to double your income in retirement. But as I said before, subconsciously, and I can't tell you how many people I talk to and they say, I'm never dealing with an advisor. But then I'm thinking, okay, well, why are you out here? There's got to be better things to do than listen to this for an hour and a half. It's because they want to find out more. They know subconsciously, am I getting everything I am getting from the advisor? I was talking to one gentleman with a firm. One of the things that's going on right now is you can see the fees, right? So a lot of times, how many people are in mutual funds, out of curiosity? Okay, most people, right? How many people sell their house about every 2 years, 2.5 years? every 2 years you say, I gotta get out of here, I'm going to the neighborhood. Nobody, right? When you're in mutual funds, and this is not a knock on the mutual funds, 'cause I used to sell mutual funds back in the day. But it's like selling your house every 2 years, about every 2 years, because most of the real estate agents, they charge around 5%. So on the mutual funds, there's around a 2% fee, then there's trading costs, because it costs some money to trade, and there's a lot of hidden fees. More often than not, it's around 2.5%. You're not necessarily aware of it, nobody reads the prospectus, it's around 2%. Even if it's below 2%, every few years, it's like selling your house. So the question is are we getting value? And then the other thing I always come across is when people look at their statements, they say XYZ Acme Fund, and I said, have you any idea what's in XYZ Acme Fund? They have no idea. When people sit down with me, I'll show them a sample statement, and it'll be stuff like RBC, Apple, JP Morgan, you know, all sorts of companies that you may recognize, bonds like Air Canada bonds, that type of stuff. So you actually know exactly what you own, and right down to the penny. So if the markets go down, you say, okay, what do we do? The other thing is, I had a discussion with another gentleman who did another seminar, is, okay, what happens in retirement? Markets just drop, 20%. Because something bad's happening in the US. Well, one of the things that he'll address is, hey, here's the stuff we need to sell in order to raise the money for your RIF. But we're gonna do it in such a way it's gonna have very, very minimal effect on your portfolio. A lot of times when people have mutual funds, they have to take that money out of that mutual funds, and if the market's going down, as you saw that sequence of return, it's brutal. So that's one of the things I address is clarity. So a lot of times, subconsciously, people are thinking, okay, I got an advisor, I like the advisor, and a lot of people are fairly happy with their advisor, not necessarily upset, but they know subconsciously in their mind, it's like, look, am I getting everything I am getting? And when you retire, you only have really one shot at retirement. Once you turned on that RIF thing, yeah, you can move from one institution to another, but if the market's gone down, it's too late. You're just moving from one fire to maybe a smaller fire, but you're still on fire. You gotta position yourself that if something bad happens, and I'm gonna tell you that something bad will happen every so often, we're in the longest bull market, something's gonna happen. When it does happen, it's gonna be too late. It's sort of like, when's the best time to get out of a burning building? Probably 5 minutes early as opposed to 10 minutes too late. You know, if there's only one exit, everybody wants to leave the market. You know, the door's not big enough for everybody to go through at the same time. So, what I'm just gonna suggest is hand in your survey. You're gonna have a little draw, so a gift certificate. And if you book an appointment with me, you get Larry. I paid Larry actually $130. That's one of the things as an advisor I do. I do a lot of stuff. I also help people with their taxes. There's some accountants that I deal with, so I'll deal with accounts. So a lot of stuff I do for the fees that you actually pay already, and I just incorporate that. And that's it. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yep.
You had up on the screen about taxes at death to CRA, and I was trying to figure that out. Was that just the taxes for the income tax year that year? Or were you referring to, is there an inheritance or a death tax?
Yeah, you could have probate taxes, you could, the taxes could be for your RSP or your RIF. You know, it depends if you got a spouse. Like, let's say you've got a husband and wife, ultimately they both passed away, you got $1 million in your RSP. Well, half that money is going back to CRA.
Right.
And there's also probate taxes, a lot of other taxes that a lot of people aren't aware of. We can discuss that and to go into detail.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Any other questions?
Brian, can you explain how the draw works for the long-term care guide? How does that work?
Well, basically when you enter your name on the survey, we're gonna pull out a name and we're gonna have a draw.
That'll be here tonight, so
Yep.
don't leave the room.
Yep.
Okay, so we have to do that quickly.
Yep. All right. So I'm gonna give this to my lovely wife. I didn't introduce my wife here.
I met everybody.
Whoops.
Now we have to wait till the certain.
If you don't care,
So you fill out